In one study that we were provided the data of, there had been some fraud actually. One of the sites had filled out the patient questionnaires themselves. In other words, the site staff had filled out the patient questionnaire, the quality of life questionnaires, and again, in a manner that would be very hard to detect. In fact, the on-site monitoring visits detected this problem because the handwriting on these questionnaires was too similar from patient to patient. And so that sort of gave them a hint that something was going on. So they knew that there was something going on in the site, and when we analyzed the data from the trial, without knowing what site it was that had this problem, again, CluePoints identified this site as having quality of life data that weren't consistent with the rest of the sites. And so, again, it's very difficult for physicians or for trialists to invent or fabricate data in a manner that makes them plausible. If you analyze these data statistically, more likely than not, you will find that these data were not plausible data. And so CluePoints is useful to detect completely innocuous errors due to miscalibration of an equipment, but also to detect fraud and manipulation of the data. Now, in between these two extremes, the completely innocuous data due to miscalibration all the way down to fraud, you have a continuum of problems. Sloppiness, or lack of attention, or lack of proper training is a cause of problems in many clinical trials. And investigators or site personnel often fill out the CRF without understanding exactly what is required. And when that is the case, again, the data that they generate by doing so can be detected as being different from the data that you would expect to see. And then, again, CluePoints would detect such shifts in the data, whether it be the mean that's different, or whether it be the variance, whether it be the correlation between variables. There is always something that's not, correct or compatible with the data from the other side. And so again, it's based purely on statistical algorithms that you can detect problems in the data that would otherwise have been unnoticed. To give you an extreme example, we've reanalyzed a data set from a trial that was, in fact, looked at by many people, including the FDA and the EMA. The drug was approved, and yet we found in a clinical trial that the blood pressure of the patients in one site had not been measured. The patients had the same blood pressure at every visit, and that was the case for every patient. Now, this is statistically impossible. Now, this trial is interesting because it led to a drug approval. It was looked at by the FDA, it was looked at by the CRO that did the trial, it was looked at by the sponsor. Absolutely no one saw this. And again, CluePoints saw it very easily because to have the same data repeatedly over time for the same patients is just very implausible statistically. Now you could say, well, we could have seen it otherwise, yes, but the advantage of CluePoints is that it will look at the totality of the data and run every possible statistical test on the data. So it's a very exhaustive system, and that is what makes it powerful.